Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Hutton's Valley Permaculture. With all the work that I've been doing lately in my front garden, my kitchen garden has become neglected. In today's video, we'll be doing some harvesting, clearing and mulching, and hopefully by the day's end, we'll have this garden under control. But before we get into any work, I thought we could have a look around and see what's happening midsummer in my kitchen garden. And starting off our kitchen garden tour is a look at the lemon tree. Now, the last time we were here in my kitchen garden, I was debating whether to cut off a long branch that was kind of hanging out here. It was laden with fruit and I wasn't sure what to do, whether to take the whole thing off, take off half, tie it up. So what I decided to do was take that whole branch out. Think about the future rather than the current crop of lemons, and give the tree reason to sort of go upwards rather than outwards. I will be trimming at the top to keep it at a reasonable size, but the tree has really bushed up with that bit of a trim, and it's still got plenty of lemons coming on it. One of the early fruiting berry plants in my kitchen garden is this boysenberry. It usually fruits starting the start of December, so right at the start of summer, and it produces masses of berries over the next couple of weeks. Now, I've essentially finished harvesting it all. There are a few berries still on the plant, but I'm leaving that to the birds now. Today, one of the things we have to do is remove all the netting. But something we also have to do over the next month is keep an eye on the growth. Once it finishes fruiting, all this growth seems to just take off, and it's something that you don't want taking over your garden. So I'll be coming through and trimming all those vining branches from it to keep it well contained. Following on from the boysenberry harvest, I did get some strawberries out of this garden. They finished, and as you can see, there's flowers coming. As the weather warms up a little bit more, I'll be getting some more strawberries from this patch. I have a number of rhubarb plants in this garden, and each of them have produced a flower head. Now, it's best to remove those as soon as possible because it does take energy from the plant. So one of my tasks today is to get those removed and chopped up and used as mulch. Just wandering down through my new trellis, I've got the first of my kiwi fruit. This one's the male. Now, it has been a little bit affected by the hail that I got late spring, but the growth sort of kicked on again after that, and it's starting to spread across the top of the trellis. So much so, I'm going to have to control all the sprawling vines. Some of the vines are really curling up the trellis nicely with no help at all, while others are just reaching for the skies and will have to be controlled. Another of the plants that will need to be controlled in the kitchen garden is the comfrey. Now you can see there's lots of comfrey up on the garden bed itself, but there's also lots down on my path. Now that's not a result of seeds falling, because I do manage the flower heads before they get to seeds, but that was a result of putting this small retaining wall in. All the roots seem to go everywhere when we chop through the soil, and resulted in all this extra comfrey growing along the path. Just next to my comfrey, kiwi fruit and rhubarb is the first of my 2 apple trees in my front garden. Now, earlier in spring I did put nets over them because the birds here like to eat the fruit when they're really small and will take all of them off unless you prevent them with a bit of netting. These are a Crips pink apple that are looking mostly good at this point, but I do have some developing this sort of scab appearance to them, so I'll have to do some research about that. These apples are generally ready to harvest by about April. One thing that does need to be done today is controlling all of this lemon balm, which is growing at the base of the apple tree. The second apple tree is hiding over the back there, also with its netting on, right next to this mega blackcurrant plant. Now, the blackcurrant has essentially finished fruiting. There are maybe just a couple of little berries left on it. But like the boysenberry, I've got bags of that in the freezer. Now this has turned out to be a really huge shrub. It loves it in this position here, but I think time has come to give it a really good prune. So we might include that in our list of things to do today. Just in amongst all this calendula and a little bit of hollyhock is my orange tree that needed some help with some magic elixir, I think last year, and I think I might be adding a little bit more of that as well. That's when you dilute urine 1 in 10 with water and just feed that to your citrus trees, and that really helps bring them along. But I'm still pretty happy with this tree. It's the second tree I've had in this spot. The first one did no good at all, so this one is starting to grow, so I'm quite happy, given it's a ruby memorial for my little dog who's buried here. There's the red currant that we don't need to do much with today. More lemon balm that needs controlling. And as we work our way over to have a look at the apple tree, we can see there's a rogue pumpkin plant. Now this has just grown as a volunteer. I don't know what pumpkin it is, but I think I'll be working my way around that today and leaving that to produce whatever pumpkins it likes. Just on the other side of the pumpkin and the currant plant is where I planted out some strawberries. Now they've kind of been a bit inundated by some calendula volunteers, which I don't mind really. I've got another big strawberry patch out in the front garden, but the strawberry plants have settled in, and given a bit of warm weather, I think we'll start to get some production. Inside our apple tree tent now, we've got the John o' Gold apple. These apples are certainly further along than my Cripps pink tree, and I think they should be ready to harvest in about February. Like my other tree, there are some that are marked and sort of have got a bit of a scabby appearance, and it looks like a bush rat or two might have been in here as well. But as you can see, there's still plenty of apples to harvest on this tree, even though the little rodents have got some. One thing that becomes quickly evident when you come inside of the netting is how it can get out of control in the undergrowth under the tree. All of this will need to be cut down and used as mulch for this tree, just to prevent some of these weeds, seeds, being spread around further. Now we can take a look at my next netted area, and that is where I'm hiding my blueberries and some raspberries. In this garden here I have 6 blueberry plants, which I've been harvesting from for the last month or so. I do have quite a lot of blueberry fruit in the freezer for future use, and these plants have been really productive, although they have been hard to access, especially the one that's hiding in amongst all the raspberries over there. I have autumn fruiting raspberries which have been giving me a little bit of fruit, but their time to shine is still to come really. They're just getting ready with their berries now. But those plants used to be over the other side of the pond and have crept right around the pond, and have now decided to call this area here home, where the blueberries were. But I'll leave them for the moment. I seem to be getting plenty of both blueberries, and I anticipate plenty of raspberries soon, so maybe it's a match made in heaven. In the middle of my kitchen garden is another of my citrus, and this time it's my mandarin. Now it's just got little fruits coming. Some of them just aren't going to form and drop off. Last season it had heaps of mandarins on it, and I'm expecting the same again. Also in the middle of my kitchen garden, on the other side of my mandarin, I've got an Australian native, which is a lemon myrtle. Now this plant is just about to burst into flower, and their flowers are beautiful, but the leaves of this plant are used dried or fresh to make teas. Now, believe it or not, in this mess are some gooseberry plants, which are kind of hiding in there. They didn't fruit this season. I don't know if it was cold enough in this area of the garden, But this is all evening primrose that we can chop down. We've got some seeding parsley in there as well, and various other plants going to seed. That could just be a weed actually. So what I need to do during my cleanup is get in there. There's more lemon balm that needs to be dealt with. And I'll just be chopping all this vegetation and using it as a mulch around my productive plants. And just over the back there, we have my lime tree, which has a few little limes just coming on it. It was very productive last season. Again, I think it benefited from a little bit of magic elixir that was used, and I'll be sure to be adding a bit more to it fairly soon. And that brings us to the herb garden section of my kitchen garden, which, like the rest of the garden, is a little out of control and will need some managing. I've got chives hiding down here. There's flatleaf parsley. The lemon balm is just taking over. I've got plenty of rosemary and that's looking very healthy. Over the back I've got some sage and there's some Vietnamese mint. There's also other little plants over here like yarrow that I will be harvesting some of those plants and propagating them so I can share them around. And I've got the beautiful pineapple sage here. Now in my last video I mentioned about propagating these plants and there was a bit of a stool layering effect going on. Now I did end up cutting those off and potting them up and those plants are actually going really well. Also in here I've got my sprawling oregano that produces these really lovely little bunches of flowers. And that's a signal for me that it's time to be harvested. Now just in here should be a lemon thyme plant that's just down here. Yes, found it. So at times like this it's good to remember where you've planted your little plants that you want to keep and chop down all the rest of it, but make sure you mulch those really well and give them a bit more chance at getting sunshine, and that will just spring back into life. And just near my pineapple sage and oregano is my second lemon thyme. Again, kind of getting a bit inundated this time by some creeping buttercup and shaded a bit by my pineapple sage, which I don't mind too much because the pineapple sage is beautiful, but I will be certainly chopping down all the vegetation around this plant to give it a better chance. Well, that's a pretty good look around my kitchen garden. Let's get into some work now, starting with some harvesting. And all I've got to harvest today are two of my herbs. The first one being some bay leaves. I often just sneak out and grab some bay leaves fresh when I need them. But it's good also to have some dry bay leaves in the cupboard and also so you can share. And by taking a harvest today, we can also keep the height of this plant under control. I'm just going to snip a whole heap of these branches. The last time I did this, it seemed to just spur it into more growth. So I don't think we can hurt it by taking too much. Now the last time that I harvested some bay leaves on camera, someone commented to me that you can use the leaves to make a liqueur of some description. Now they have a beautiful aroma, so rather than just drying them all, maybe I'll look into what else you can do with bay leaves. That's a perfect place to hang them to dry during summer. The next herb I'd like to harvest is the oregano. Generally when it goes to flower, the plant's at its biggest, so I try and get it before it's sort of gone to seed so that there's still some, freshness and greenness in the leaves. The bees won't be happy, but they'll still be able to access these flowers when I hang them up. Well, that's a fairly decent bunch to hang up and dry, and it's also leaving plenty actually for the bees still, but another win from the harvest is the clearing of the path. A bit of a rinse off with water is a good idea before you get them hung up as well. With the herbs now harvested and tied up, we can get to work with the clearing and mulching, and I'm going to start with my rhubarb plants and the comfrey just using my sickle and my secateurs. All I'm going to do is chop it up and use all my prunings as mulch in the garden, even all the seeding rhubarb. Now with the bulk comfrey, I will use it under productive trees or where I need to suppress things like grasses. All this grass is really hard to pull out, so if I continually just try and suppress it, my hope is eventually it will become under control. Luckily for most of the garden, the grasses aren't any longer an issue. I also use a lot of the old rhubarb leaves in mulch as well. Just cut them up and drop them down. Now something that I won't be using as a mulch is any trimmings from my boysenberry plant. They root very readily and you'd get lots of plants spreading around, and it's a very prickly plant even though it is very productive. It has its negative points, so we don't want too much of that around. So I'll move that out and I can chuck that in the compost. Mulches the kiwi nicely. Just having a closer look here now. You can see all the fresh stuff that I've put down, the rhubarb and then the comfrey. But all of this darker material is the mulch from the last time I did it. There's a lot of comfrey there still and the old rhubarb leaves, so they're still covering the ground. My hope with this garden space going forward is just to be able to use what I sort of chopped down as the total mulch for the area and save on bringing in wood chips. So with the mulch we've added today, this little area here is really well covered. The soil's covered and it should keep the moisture in going through summer. I'll just see if I can contain this wayward kiwi fruit and see if we can get it heading along our trellis without snapping it, of course. Heading in the right direction now. Just needs a little time to get used to it and start to coil itself around this Rio. Tell you what, it smells gorgeous stepping on and cutting all this chocolate mint. It has the most amazing aroma. But I don't care if I chop down the chocolate mint, it will just grow again and it can form part of the mulch layer as well. And it's kind of what I'm going to do with the lemon balm. There's already a lot of the plants here, so even if some of it roots, it doesn't really matter. It'll all just be mulch down the track. Now there's another rhubarb tucked in here, although the black currant makes it hard to see. So we'll get that mulched. I've cleared all underneath the apple tree. Everything that was growing here I've just chopped down and used as mulch. That includes the calendula and there's some California poppy over there. some more comfrey, generally just a lot of weeds, but I did get a couple of strawberry plants over there kind of accidentally. But all of this mulch will just help keep the moisture in for this apple tree that's not too far off being harvested. Now I'll do a quick chop and mulch in this section, and carefully under that pumpkin I'll get out all that lemon balm down and underneath the red currant, plus the apple tree. But over here with my blueberries and raspberries, I'm just going to let them finish before I deal with whatever's going on under there. Okay, now we find ourselves at my gooseberry plants, which I'll have to kind of trim around and get all these seeding plants away. And over the back there, the boysenberry is kind of escaping over to this side. It didn't look too bad on the other side, but it's all coming this way. So there's a bit of trimming to do there too. My gooseberries are a lot clearer now, and there's a bit of mulch down around them. I've also trimmed a lot of this boysenberry on this side. It gives my lemon myrtle a little bit more space. And there was a whole pile of lemon balm here, which I'm using to mulch the ground as well. And I also managed to get the netting off this plant. I've trimmed little walkways so you can kind of get into the garden. And again, I've just used that material to mulch around the plants. Now this is under the lemon tree. I trimmed a bit of the lemon tree, and there's also a bit more of the bay tree I trimmed, and just using that as mulch under here. There was plenty of dandelion to mulch under my mandarin tree. And just through here are where my herbs are. I mean, it does look a little bit messy at the moment, but if there's any seeding plants, they can drop their seeds there and grow some more plants right where they are. And I have used some of it to mulch some of the herbs that are looking quite good at the moment, like this sage plant. And other little herbs such as this lemon thyme have a lot more space around them as well. I still have to get my brush cutter out, which I'm going to use to clear this pathway and some of the grassy area surrounding the garden. And I'll be just using the material generated by that to continue mulching all the plants in the garden. Well, except for a bit of brush cutting, which I'll be doing a bit later, that's all I'm doing in the kitchen garden for the moment. There's still lots of weeds and there's still areas that do need mulching, but I've made a really good start on a large percentage of it, and it will help the plants that we want to flourish and keep the weeds down so that they continue to disappear. I found that there weren't so many grasses as other years, so I think the system is kind of evolving, and if we continue to build the soil, it'll just keep heading in the right direction. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.